Hi, and welcome to this Go for Growth webinar on the Procurement Act 2023. As we know, the regulations came into force on the 24th of February last month. And so just a few weeks in, this is a look at how we're going. A couple of things to note before we get started. My name is Gillian Askew. I'm so sorry I can't be with you today, but my colleague Jimmy is on hand to take any questions that you might have. You're watching this recording, so a copy of this recording will be sent out along with the slide deck to all registered attendees. And we are only a few weeks in. This was recorded on the 4th of March. So we are only a couple of weeks into the regulations going live. So what I'm going to try and cover over the next half hour or so is a couple of the key points just to review and remind ourselves around the simplified bidding process. So what are we looking at today in terms of the bidding process, and also the transparency regime and the implications thereof. As we know, the National Procurement Policy Statement was issued also, which came into force at the same time as the regulations. So we'll have a quick look at the NPPS and the implications thereof, both for public sector and for suppliers and bidders. And then we'll have a look at Central Digital Platform through two lenses, actually. So as suppliers are now registering and filling in the Supplier Information Service, I'll reflect on that process. But also, as of yesterday, as of the 3rd of March 2025, we took some live tender information out of the Central Digital Platform. So those numbers will have moved on by the time you watch this video on the 13th. So those numbers will have moved around a bit, but this was an early view. And then we'll finish up with how can we continue to support providers, especially smaller organisations, as we navigate the new regulations. And of course, we'll have two concurrent sets of regulations in play. And then there'll be time for questions at the end. If anybody does want to have a coffee and a chat or any more detailed conversation with us, please do feel free to get in touch. Contact details are also in there. So going to have a look at the simplified bidding process and enhanced transparency to start with. So it's really a quick reminder as to what these key changes look like. So we're focusing on bidding process first. So the number of procedures has decreased significantly under the Procurement Act. So the Public Contract Regulations of 2015, there are 6 procedures, 7 if you count in design contest, under which contracting authorities could procure goods, services and works. Under current regulations, I've got to stop myself from saying the new regulations. The current regulations, the Procurement Act 2023, there are only 3 procedures. There is the open procedure, competitive flexible procedure, and direct award. Largely, the open procedure remains much the same under Procurement Act 23 as it is under Procurement Contract, Public Contracting Regulations of 2015. So single stage process, no restriction on the number of submissions. And I guess what we're seeing is the majority of opportunities that are out there on the Central Digital Platform are open procedure. There are some other things in there, and I'll show you them when we get to the Central Digital Platform element. But it's likely, and we were predicting this before the regulations went live, it's likely that open procedures will be the most voluminous thing that we see as the Procurement Act goes live, because it is the most similar to existing procedure. We've then got the competitive flexible procedure that pretty much replaces all other procedures in PCR 15, and basically means that contracting authorities can design procurement competitions that deliver the best possible outcomes for the public purse and encourage innovation when required. There are some minimum requirements with the competitive flexible procedure relating to notice publication, for example, and timescales that have to be met. And unlike the open procedure, the competitive flexible procedure must be at least 2 stages, although contracting authorities can include more stages if needs be. And then we have something called direct award, which replaces the negotiated procedure without prior publication. So direct award basically means that contracting authorities can award a contract to a supplier without engaging in any prior competitive process. That said, just like the negotiated procedure without prior publication, direct award isn't a free-for-all. It can only be used in special circumstances. There is a list of the justifications for using direct award in the regulations 41 to 43 of the Procurement Act 2023. So you can have a look at when direct award can be used. One of the things I think to point out is that in Procurement Act 2023, direct award has a very explicit meaning, and I've just detailed what that explicit meaning is. What you would find in frameworks under PCR 15 is that they have direct award capability. That terminology has now changed, and that's award without competition, I think, is the terminology. But direct award from a framework is not the terminology that we'll use under Procurement Act 23. Direct award under Procurement Act means what it says on the tin. It is that procedure without prior publication, as opposed to a direct award through a framework competition. So from a transparency perspective, unlike PCR 15, Public Contract Regulations 2015, the Procurement Act doesn't actually explicitly state transparency. Instead, transparency is demonstrated through the new notice obligations regime. And what you'll see on the screen is that transparency spans the full life cycle of procurement. So contracting authorities who are running their own procurement process are now required, to publish more notices than ever at every single stage of the procurement cycle. That includes pre-market engagement, pipeline notices, right the way through to supplier performance and contract management notices, including termination notices, etc. The number of notices, as you can see on the screen, goes from 5 to 15. And you can see on the right-hand side of this slide, if you want to go to the relevant section in the Procurement Act to have a look at those notices, you can. The central digital platform is where all over threshold opportunities will be. And I talked to an organisation in public sector this morning who are just going through the process of deciding whether central digital platform is where they will advertise all under threshold notices as well and opportunities as well. So it could well be that central digital platform will be for a lot more than just over threshold opportunities, but certainly all over threshold opportunities will be there. If you are a provider on the call today, a couple of things to note about these notices. So when you're on Central Digital Platform, you don't have to be registered to search. So you will be able to find notices in there. And I believe you'll be able to find all the notices in there without registration. However, if you want to bid or interact with any of the documents in a bid, you will have to be registered to the Central Digital Platform in order to do so. So before we get to Central Digital Platform, I just wanted to touch on the National Procurement Policy Statement, the NPPS. So it launched in February. What does it do? The National Procurement Policy Statement sets out strategic priorities for public procurement and how contracting authorities can support, and it came into effect 24th of February 2025. The National Procurement Policy Statement states, in carrying out a procurement covered by the Act, and I'm reading this verbatim, a contracting authority must have regard to the importance of delivering value for money. Achieving value for money is always the overarching priority in public procurement. This must include consideration of outcomes and quality to avoid waste from low value, poor quality bids. This means optimising the use of public funds by balancing effectiveness, efficiency and economy over the life cycle of a product, a service or works to achieve the intended outcomes of the procurement. And this includes wider socio-economic and environmental benefits and impacts. What you can see on the screen are the 4 core aims. So kickstarting economic growth, making Britain a clean energy superpower, taking back our streets, and that talks about safety on our streets, breaking down those barriers to opportunity and building a National Health Service fit for the future. And it goes on to say that contracting authorities can deliver value for money through driving economic growth and strengthening supply chains by giving small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, and voluntary community and social enterprises, VCSEs, a fair chance, creating high-quality jobs and championing innovation. It also talks about delivering social and economic value that supports the government's missions, including working in partnership across organisational boundaries where appropriate, and also ensuring that the right commercial capability and standards are in place to procure and manage contracts effectively and to collaborate with other contracting authorities to deliver best value. And I think that collaboration piece and that standards piece has two lenses. So organisations say to us in Go for Growth, consistency is crucial. So in boundary areas where organisations are buying the same or similar things, or cross-boundary where you're buying the same things. So if you're buying support to live at home in one local authority versus another local authority, and your NHS is also purchasing community care, can we come together to make sense of those requirements in a particular geographical region? Can we come together to make sure that we ask for the same accreditations, the licenses, the levels of insurance, etc.? How can we be consistent with our requirement to the marketplace to support the marketplace on that? And also, although we talk about building skills in our commercial and procurement capability, how do we also build those skills in the marketplace? In Go for Growth, the way we look at it is we are developing skills in procurement all the time, and especially with the new regulations now in force. But we need to match that with building those skills in the marketplace so that we get good quality procurements going out into a market who are able to give good quality responses. And it's both of those things that need to come together in order to make sense of the opportunity. Under that economic growth lens as well, the NPPS talks about a priority of contracting authorities should be driving economic growth and strengthening supply chains by giving SMEs and VCSEs a fair chance. And it's further demonstrated in the release of PPN 001 in February. Now, that's a mandate for all central government departments, their executive agencies, central government departments, to set a 3-year target spend with SMEs and a 2-year target spend with VCSEs, from 2025 for SMEs and from 2026 for VCSEs, to be achieved in the financial year ending 2028, and to publish results annually. Non-departmental public bodies, the wider public sector, can also adopt this on a voluntary basis, or if you are an executive agency, you might fall into the reporting requirement of your corresponding department. But what we hope to see in Go for Growth is that contracting authorities across the whole of the public sector use PPN 001 as a real opportunity to think about what direct spend opportunities there are and what they want to aim for and aspire to as a contracting authority to really start delivering against that economic growth and breaking down barriers for SMEs and VCSEs. So if you think about the central digital platform, I've mentioned before that you can search for opportunities on there without registration. However, to interact with any opportunities or to bid, you have to be registered, and you have to complete the supplier information and have received your share code. Now, I'm not going to go through how that works. That in and of itself is roughly a 20-minute process, but we have created a tutorial video on how to do this. The link is on the screen, and that will be a live link in the slide deck when you get it. You will need to first get your gov.uk one login if you don't already have one, and then complete your supplier information. You will then get two things. You'll get your unique identifier as a provider, and you'll also get your share code, and you'll be entering both into bids. And what that means is that information that's in the supplier information system will be pulled through to what the public sector are calling the e-sender units, the procurement portals. So you shouldn't have to repeat anything that you've already put into the supplier information system in the central digital platform in any live bid that you're answering, because that information should have pulled through. And that's all about trying to streamline and make efficient the process of bidding for providers. It's worth noting that the central digital platform will house all pipeline, contracts register, supplier performance, etc. It's a really useful place for providers and potential bidders to go to. For the first time above threshold, we've got everything really in one place. So that's really good. Arguably, and there is a lot that has changed through Procurement Act 23, but arguably it is perhaps one of the more transformational things for suppliers, and it may well evolve over time. So it might be that more information can be pulled through the supplier information system so that as much as possible can be done in advance and pulled through. The other lens on the central digital platform is what does it look like? I think I read somewhere that before Find a Tender closed down for its upgrade prior to the regulations going live on the 24th of February, I'm certain I read somewhere, please don't quote me on the number, I'm certain I read somewhere though that there were 318 live procurement opportunities that went out in the remaining 24 or 48 hours before Find a Tender service closed for its additional work, which tells you that lots of people were quite keen to potentially to just buy a little bit of space to get used to the regulations when they came in. As of the 3rd of March, there were 150 notices of all notice types on Central Digital Platform. Of course, that will change minute by minute, never mind day by day. But when I filtered to tender notices only, there were 96 live tender notices. And a couple to note. So there's a competitive flexible procedure that is being let by Sheffield Hallam Uni. So it's worth around 862 million. And there is an open framework that is being led by Newport City Council, valued at 4.3 million. So people are starting to use those new products and new procurement mechanisms that the Procurement Act has made available. So it'll be interesting to see over time what both the contracting authorities and the bidders' experience of those new procedures are. We've got about another 4 or 5 Procurement Act sessions this year and running into next year. We'll keep trying to gather that information to report back on what the learning is, what the what the feedback is, and how we can support the provider marketplace more. Our next webinar is in April with YPO on the Procurement Act. You can find it on our website and also on our Eventbrite page. We will be thinking about open frameworks, dynamic markets, and competitive flexible procedure in more detail then with YPO. So feel free, if you want to have a bit of a deeper dive into some of those new constructs, to have a look at that session and book on if you want to come along. So supplier performance and contract management arguably is an area of real increased focus through the Act. And the Act also introduced the supplier debarment list, where suppliers can be excluded or excludable to public procurement based on certain grounds. You might already have seen that there is some information in the media about debarment investigations following the Grenfell Tower inquiry. So it's in most of the tabloid media that 7 organisations involved in the Grenfell Tower disaster faced possible debarment from public contracts as the government accepted all recommendations of the public inquiry into the devastating fire and have set out plans for what they're calling tough action on the construction industry. Our understanding of the supplier debarment process is that suppliers are informed on the intention to be disbarred. And you, of course, have right of reply. You can appeal the decision if you feel that it's incorrect or unfair. You can also request to be removed from the debarment list early should the situation be remedied. And I believe that there is an evidential process in place to allow that to happen. However, notwithstanding any of that, we understand that the debarment itself lasts for a maximum of 5 years, after which the supplier would be automatically removed from the debarment list. My view when I've been running these sessions before on debarment is that it is not something to be feared by the vast majority of suppliers. The exclusion grounds are public knowledge, the mandatory exclusions, the discretionary exclusions. If you're a provider to the public sector, you can access what those exclusions are. My understanding is they haven't changed from PCR 15. So they are for very serious offences, which the vast majority of organisations will not fall foul of. Some of the things that are real positive about the publication of supplier performance, though, is that actually when you are a good supplier, it being a matter of public record could be actually really helpful to growth. And so although debarment can feel like that is a scary thing, I also think that there is lots of positives in having that focus on supplier performance. And there is greater emphasis on-time payments as well. So, there's lots of reasons to get excited, I think, about contract management and supplier performance under the Act. For those suppliers that are working really hard and doing really good things, it can be a really positive way of showing that to other organisations and strengthening our ability to grow. So what does this mean for suppliers? I've already mentioned that we will have concurrent regulatory frameworks. So Go for Growth has been coaching suppliers for the last 4 years, over 20,000 suppliers that we have been working with, over 60,000 interventions and engagements, all of which have created a rich intelligence around capability, maturity, and even capacity, actually, in some ways. What we know is that we will have this train track now, these concurrent regulatory frameworks. Anything that was let up to the Procurement Act going live will live its life out as under those regulations, although it is worth noting that any dynamic purchasing systems that are already in place will automatically expire, if they haven't already, on the 23rd of February 2029. So a DPS that was let just before the regulations, even if it was let for longer than 5 years, 4 years even, they will automatically expire on the 23rd of February 2029. That was one of the messages that came out of the Procurement Act Expo last week. Obviously, anything issued on or after the 24th of February will be governed by the Procurement Act 2023. So one of the challenges that smaller organisations especially might face is understanding those new constructs. So things like competitive flexible procedure, open frameworks, dynamic markets. And of course, in dynamic markets, what we no longer have is the ability to use a dynamic market under threshold. So where a DPS was very popular for lower value opportunities, under threshold opportunities, even though my understanding is it wasn't actually, a DPS wasn't designed for that. Actually, it became a really useful tool. We don't have that tool at our disposal anymore. So dynamic markets can't be used under threshold. It will take more guidance and more support for suppliers. Organisations like growth hubs, like Go for Growth, chambers, etc., will be trying to do those things. Social Enterprise UK, that we're a member of because we're a social enterprise, are also doing lots of guidance for suppliers on Procurement Act. But it won't be a short burst of support. It will need to last, I think, probably over the next 1 to 2 years for sure. I think there is some concern around debarment and supplier measurement and contract management and the increased focus. However, I think the vast majority of organisations run their contracts really well, compliantly, as they should be doing. And actually, in that case, it could be a real positive rather than something to be nervous of. And if we just think about in the latter section of this session, how can we remove barriers for small to medium enterprises? What can we tangibly do as a contracting authority? I won't talk through them all, but I will just pick out a few. The providers tell us the more you talk to the market, the better, and the more equipped you'll be as a contracting authority with knowledge around what the market has to offer, what their capability, their maturity, what innovation looks like, but also what the capacity is for what you're intending to buy. And you can build that into your specification, you can build that knowledge into your procurement processes, but also that might help to develop the market going forward. It might help in that preparedness of the market if they know what's coming. The market always tells us that more is more. So you might not know yet, and it might evolve over time, but the more transparent you can be about how you'll utilise things like competitive flexible procedure, what stages you might include, it will be super helpful to the marketplace, especially to SMEs and VCSEs who are not as often active or have dedicated resources for things like bidding. There's a question on pipelines. So the Procurement Act, the pipeline notices for opportunities of a total contract value above 2 million. If you're really wanting to engage local small to medium enterprises and voluntary sector, more often than not, they're going to be working at a lot lower level than that. We're talking 100,000, maybe a bit more, 250, but often even lower than that. But those organisations need time to prepare like anybody else do. So although the Act is not asking for pipeline notices or to publish a pipeline above 2 million, we would really encourage to be going down to around 50k if you can in your pipeline, just to help really widen that participation and inclusivity and accessibility and that foresight. And that's especially important if organisations are needing to collaborate to bid an opportunity and deliver an opportunity. The business school at Cardiff University always tell us that it will take at least 6 months to build a consortia, partnership or collaboration in order to be able to bid and deliver public sector work together. Also think in terms of, thinking about if you are going to target your SME spend. We did an iGov survey with YPO and in that survey, 150 procurement professionals, 30% of them said they didn't know what they were spending with small to medium enterprises. So being able to do that better or have more impact or do more of it is actually really challenging if you don't know what the baseline looks like. So if you don't yet know what your SME spend is, and we would also encourage everybody to break down that SME spend. A medium-sized organisation at the top end of the definition is turning over 50 million a year. Something around that sort of magnitude. If you're really wanting to get into micro and small business, 0 to 49 employees, their turnover is going to be much, much lower. That's probably in the hundreds of thousands. So actually, if you are looking at defining your SME spend, it's really important to look at the whole of that, but in categories. So how many micro, how many small, how many medium, and really think about not just SME, but who in that SME definition are you really trying to target, and how will you know if you've done it if you've not got a baseline? And the other thing on there is spend targets are being set for direct spend, and I think that's a real positive, but we shouldn't forget the supply chain. The supply chain is not a dirty word by any stretch. Supplying the public sector through tier one organisations is a great route for lots of businesses. However, it's worth noting that those tier one providers will be flowing through to their supply chain, their requirements that public sector place on them through the Procurement Act. And if you're the public sector, we would encourage you to think about baking into your contract with tier ones that real local agenda. So not just engaging SMEs, but engaging the local provider marketplace wherever possible, so that you can really see the tangible benefits through that supply chain in your local area to help with that kickstarting of economic growth. And if you're a provider on the call, what can you do to get prepared? I mean, we are in force now. These are the regulations that we're working with. We will still continue to prepare and support as much as we need to. There are lots of things going on at the minute. If you've got time, you can try and register for lots of workshops, webinars, like these kind of things. You won't necessarily need to attend them all. Usually slide decks and recordings will come out after, so you shouldn't miss out, even though going to them live can often be great because you get the chance to ask questions. Not all will send slide decks out, so it's probably worth checking in advance. We would always suggest that you invest in your bid process knowledge and skills. So Go for Growth has a free public sector supply ready accreditation that will help you identify, understand and overcome any potential gaps in knowledge and resources that you might have. There is a live link to that accreditation at point 4 if you want to have a look at it. There's also on our website lots of resources around bid skills. And we've got some courses on our learning management system on both bid skills and the Procurement Act itself. Understanding what you're doing on social value and environmental credentials is really crucial. The Act is really driving at sustainable procurement, social value, carbon net zero. Those agenda are becoming really pivotal. And we're seeing weightings really climb. So they can be bid winning, and then therefore they can also be bid losing. We are seeing weightings as high as 20% for social value. Social value in the public sector would also incorporate environmental carbon net zero type requirements as well. And then finally, the process in procurement is a digital process. It's becoming more digital. In a very personal opinion, I think we're still actually way behind other sectors, but our digital skill sets as providers is becoming increasingly important. So you might be joining this webinar or watching it back via your smartphone or tablet. Typically, you can't write or upload a bid using those kinds of devices. You would need a laptop or desktop type computer. We've supported some sectors of suppliers in libraries. We've supported them in all manner of different ways when access to technology or digital capability isn't quite where it needs to be. So it isn't necessarily that you need a huge investment, but you should be aware as a provider that this process is increasingly becoming more and more digital. So even if the delivery of the goods or services that you are bidding for isn't, the process of actually bidding to win or retain them is a digital process. So even monitoring market opportunities is a digital process. So feel free to get in touch if you need any help on that. So as I said, our contact details are on here. Whether you're in the public sector or you're in the provider market, please do feel free to get in touch. Go for Growth has been around for a few years now. The National Procurement Policy Statement is where Go for Growth is most active. So we are absolutely getting involved in developing the marketplace, supporting small to medium enterprises and the voluntary sector providers to sustainably grow over the long term in the public sector. We have courses for both procurement CPD accredited courses for procurement commissioners and contract managers to help develop those skills. We've also got courses for the marketplace, so we can really help everybody to develop those skills where they want to. And please feel free to also chat to us about carbon. We have a Scope 3 emissions programme that is actually really doing great things in terms of the pathway to net zero in public sector. So in the things that are really important in the National Procurement Policy Statement, Go for Growth is here to help. If you want to have a chat, please get in touch. There is a link for providers on here. There is a short course on the Procurement Act if that's useful. And that's everything from me. Thank you. That was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what we've seen over the last couple of weeks and a bit of a refresh and reminder of what this all means to us. And as we see and feel it right now, I will leave you in the very capable hands of my colleague to take any questions. Thank you ever so much.